What happens when a former TV news anchor joins the other side and starts a campaign to tell the truth? Well, the left freaks out and does everything it can to shut him up. They swatted him. They condemned him on social media. They did everything they could to silence him. It didn't work.
Your show's a big hit. It's a big success. You do fantastically. Your ratings are great, and we're very proud of you.
This is Unshaken and Unafraid with Joe Pags.
Now I'm sitting with the incredible Lara Logan. Of course, you know her from CBS. You know her from all sorts of news coverage for way more years than you could imagine because she appears to be 35 years old. Lara, first of all, thanks for welcoming us into your studio. This is the Going Rogue with Lara Logan podcast studio. Thanks for having us.
And I love having you here.
Thank you so much.
You're one of my favorite people.
Well, you're one of my favorite people. And I loved watching you do all these media hits just now because South Africa is all the buzz right now. Mm-hmm. And the media wants to push a narrative. And I could hear what the other side was saying to you. The first one just let you say what you were saying and took you at your word. The second one wanted to challenge you on some stuff. And that was a bad move because you know your stuff. You talked very directly about what's actually happening in South Africa. So I want to get into who you are, where you came from, what your upbringing was like, all that. But let's hit the top news now and get that out of the way.
And I like being challenged, by the way.
Oh,
I didn't mind that at all. I thought that was good.
To be honest, was it a challenge, though? Was it? It wasn't. I was sitting here. It was a challenge for him. It wasn't a challenge for you, I don't think. So you're from South Africa. I know nothing about the country other than Nelson Mandela, other than apartheid, other than in 1994 that ended, other than Mandela was the president for a short amount of time. How did that country become what it became? Like, are you an Afrikaner? You're not, right?
I am not. No, I'm
what does that
Irish
what does
Sicilian.
That mean, Afrikaner?
Well, it really means descendants of the Dutch.
Oh.
And the French Huguenots who came to South Africa more than 400 years ago.
Okay.
And in fact, Afrikaans is like an ancient form of Dutch. So it's almost like the Dutch language evolved, but Afrikaans did not. And it's not spoken anywhere else in the world.
Do you speak it at all?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. You want me to say something?
Drop me a little something.
Oh, I can swear.
No,
I won't do that. Okay, I won't do that.
It's up to you.
Okay, so I would say, goeiemôre, hoe gaan dit met jou? Baie goed, dankie. Wow. That's just a basic greeting. Hello, how are you?
Sounds like you said buy a new donkey.
Baie goed. Oh, the thing is, Afrikaans is such a colorful language.
Yeah.
And the swearing is like...
Really?
Cursing in Afrikaans is very satisfying.
Now, I don't speak Dutch, obviously, but that sounded a little Dutch with some guttural, with some in there a little bit.
Yes, it is a lot like the Dutch. So when I went to Holland as a young girl, sometimes the pronunciation is different. The written Dutch is much easier because the pronunciation's not getting in the way.
Yeah.
And guess what else it's very similar to? Flemish.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I read a book in Flemish. An entire book in Flemish, yes, because I can read Afrikaans.
It's Lara Logan. Check out her new podcast. It's called Going Rogue with Lara Logan. Let's talk about the actual situation happening now. I told you about the video I made yesterday with 15 different news outlets all saying it was an ambush yesterday with Ramaphosa in the White House. It wasn't an ambush. I mean, we had to get to the root of it. I heard you do an interview earlier. I won't call the guy out because it was kind of lame questioning, but he talked about why not do this behind closed doors? Why do it in person like that? Why do it in front of all the media? Why hide it? Why hide what's going on in South Africa? And what Trump presented wasn't manufactured by Trump.
No.
It was real.
Well, I tell you why you have to do it in front of the media, because the media is denying it.
Yes.
Even if Cyril Ramaphosa came out and said it was happening, the media would still deny it. And, there's two different issues. There's the murders, that are happening.
Yeah.
And then there's whether or not it qualifies as a genocide. Because people always love to have this argument, it's not a genocide. Well, when you are removing people from the land and you are taking away their ability to survive,
right,
and you are systematically calling for the murder of those people based on their race.
The liberals are
and
there.
all of that is happening, then you can argue that it's a genocide. And so, but the real issue here is the media won't accept that.
Right.
It doesn't matter who says it, they deny it. And when you look at the brutality of these murders and you look at how long these murders have been happening, I mean, this has been going on in South Africa for more than a decade, probably well more than that. And it's a small community.
We've heard about it maybe for 4 or 5 years. I haven't heard about it for a decade.
There's a fabulous woman in Britain called Katie
Hopkins.
Yes. Katie Hopkins did a great documentary on this in 2018. She went out to South Africa. That's how far back. That was 7 years ago. And, she interviewed people, who had been raped, who had watched their loved ones being murdered. People are sometimes boiled alive.
Oh, my God.
People are hacked. They're chopped up into pieces. Their children are murdered. 85-year-old women are gang raped. People's body parts are sliced off. Their eyes are gouged out. It's, and sometimes, they leave without stealing anything. So that means you literally just came to murder with rage and hatred in your heart.
Why do we worry about the silliness of a word? And here's what I mean. Genocide sounds horrific. I get it. It is horrific. But insurrection is horrific as well. They use that word over and over and over again.
Okay.
Why do we have to categorize it when what you just said is disgusting and brutal and should be stopped? Why do I need a word? Well, if it's the word, we'll help you stop it. If it's not the word, we won't.
Well, I tell you why. Because of the law.
Okay.
Because when you have genocide, if something is officially recognized as a genocide, then the victims of that genocide have certain rights.
Gotcha.
And, so for example...
That's why they're denying the word, Laura?
Yes, because they don't want them to qualify for political asylum.
That?
You're busy letting people come over the border because they want a better life, because they can't get a job,
right,
and they're poor, or because there's a cartel, and so and there's violence. But people who are being murdered, where someone is actually the leader of one of the most popular parties in South Africa, is going out publicly over and over again, calling for their throats to be slit, and who, by the way, says on camera that he's not yet calling for the wholesale slaughter of white people, but that he can't rule it out in the future.
That means it's coming. Right.
So, and what is that? What is the wholesale slaughter of white people? That's genocide.
It is. No, without a doubt. It's Lara Logan. Make sure you check out Going Rogue with Lara Logan on all the platforms. It's an amazing program. I love the question that you were asked the first show that Luke asked you. He said, "Why are you going rogue?" I'm going to steal that and ask that question a little bit later in this interview. I heard you doing interviews earlier, and you've got a certain affinity, or you did, for Ramaphosa. Who was this guy then? Who is he now?
Yeah. So Ramaphosa, who's the president of South Africa, he was a great guy. He was a revolutionary. He was a member of the ANC, the African National Congress, which is the ruling party. He was a comrade of Nelson Mandela.
Right.
And he was smart and charming. And he was, he had a statesman-like quality about him. And he actually worked with a man called Rolf Meyer, who was his counterpart, his white counterpart. And the two of them wrote the South African Constitution. And they did that very stressful circumstances where we didn't know which way it was going to go.
Right.
Mandela was...
But you felt he was on the right side, this guy.
Oh, absolutely. We loved him. In the media, when I say we, all us journalists who interacted with Ramaphosa, he was funny, he was charming, and he was self-deprecating, and he seemed incredibly sincere. And he was one of the people who saved that country. But then he went into private enterprise, with Anglo American. He got, a big contract, and he became very wealthy, which is, he was entitled to make that decision. He had served his country with great dignity, and he was well respected. But about 6 years ago, when he became president, he has just been a colossal disappointment to black and white South Africans alike.
When he was in the Oval Office yesterday, as we do this show today, was it an act? Was he acting? Was that planned, do you think? Was it staged? Because his reactions were kind of ridiculous. We all saw the 4.5-minute video, and that was real. There were 100,000 people chanting, jumping up and down to the Boer song, I guess, which means kill the white people. But what was that we saw yesterday? Is he being controlled by somebody else? Was he there as his own man yesterday?
I think he was cornered.
Well, he was.
He was cornered, and that's why he reacted that way. And he was embarrassed because they came with a narrative.
But he denied it all, even after seeing it.
Of course, what he said was that, yes, this is not the government's policy. And in a way, that's true. It's not the government's official policy to kill white people.
Isn't he?
Yeah. Oh, yes. And not just... Yes, but he is a leader of the opposition. Okay. But not only that, though, the South Africa... Cyril Ramaphosa, there's video of him saying these white people that are leaving, when the white farmers left South Africa, he said they're a bunch of cowards and they can get out and we don't want them. And there's other video of him saying, we're taking the land and we're not paying them anything. Ramaphosa's not as innocent as he likes to make out because he's playing to one crowd at home. And now he came here and he thought he was going to play to a different crowd and he thought he was going to get away with it. Remember, the people funding Ramaphosa are the same people who said Larry Elder was a white supremacist.
Nuts.
They're the
Just
same
nuts.
people. They don't care about the truth. They're the same people that did the whole Charlottesville thing for all those years. Trump.
They're still doing
very
it.
nice people.
Lara, they're still doing it.
That's correct. And so even when the truth comes out, John Brennan, he used to say that Trump was that Vladimir Putin was his handler, right? And Trump was a Russian spy.
Brennan's still getting paid by CNN to speak about this stuff.
Yes.
That's how nuts. Well, let me ask you this, because I heard you say that in the interviews earlier, and you and I have talked about it online and in text and everything else. What is their goal? Okay, it's Marxism. All right, so what's the goal? Soros funds everything and controls the world. There's a king of the world. The WEF takes over. What if they got everything they wanted? What does that look like? Because I don't know what they want.
I turn to them and to their words to try to understand what they want. Now, with the Marxists, there's a lot of deception because nobody gets elected, on a Marxist platform by saying, like, we're going to impoverish you, we're going to steal everything, and we're going to get richer than ever, and you're going to be worse off than you've ever been in your life, and you won't have any rights.
Right.
Because that's what happens every time, right?
Right.
That's what happens every time.
Right. No, instead they call themselves anti-fascist or we love black people or whatever. Right.
We're going to restore, justice for all, and no one will suffer. They promise you no one will suffer, and everyone will be equal, and all of that is a lie. So Marxism is like a means to an end, right? If you look back at the history of it, the Rothschilds hired Karl Marx to create a system of what? Of social control.
Right.
So really socialism, Marxism, all of that is a system of social control. You get people to buy into a collective ideology that means that anytime they want to raise their hand and say, I don't believe in this anymore, or I don't, wait, that's not what you promised. Oh, no, you're not allowed to do that, right? Because now we have you under our control.
Wow.
So, and that is, you can see that playing out all over the world. But what they do is they've aligned themselves with the globalists. So they've aligned themselves with people who believe that borders should not exist.
But what do they think they get is, I guess, the question. Do they feel they're all going to have a seat on the round table? They're going to be seated on some throne somewhere? What is the payoff for them? What do they get? Because they're going to be just like you and me if this ever happens.
There's different.
They're going to be peasants as well.
Yeah, but they don't believe that.
And subjects.
Like the Mark Zuckerbergs of this world, they don't ever think they're going to be a peasant.
They will take everything he has.
The Jeff Bezoses, they're not going to be, he doesn't think of himself as a peasant. These people think there's one rule for all of us. We are the great unwashed. The people are the masses are the great unwashed. And you look at what Yuval Noah Harari says, right? I know you know him well. Israeli university professor, advisor to Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum and so on. Harari says that with the advent of AI, that most people on Earth will become useless eaters. So we'll be consumers. So we'll take from the world, but we will contribute nothing. So that makes us useless and worthless. So why would they keep you around?
Well, they wouldn't.
They wouldn't.
Right.
So he says we have.
Well, they're also trying to cull the population. I mean, that's part of the whole deal.
Well, they've been doing that for a very long time. Look at eugenics.
Right.
I mean, people don't want to talk about these things. They want to act like you're crazy. I'm sorry, but the crazy one is the person who came up with eugenics.
Oh, absolutely.
Margaret Sanger is the crazy one.
Right.
Because she actually believed in that. And by the way, wasn't Bill Gates' father her partner in that? Yes, he was.
Not only that, but Planned Parenthood not only exists, we fund it to the tune of $500 million a year from our dollars, which makes no sense.
That's right. And then we put all these abortion clinics in black neighborhoods. I mean, Angela Stanton King, who is a black woman.
Such a great interview you had with her. Oh my God, that was amazing.
I love
Go see that
Angie's
interview.
house, by the way. That's on Angie.
Amazing.
I mean, all the women a number of women who were at her event I was at talking to Angela, they are not happy with the fact that they have all this access to abortion. They want to know why is it that their
black communities were chosen. The reverends were paid off to tell young black girls have abortions.
Yeah.
I mean, we know this. It's not speculation.
That's right. And why? And why? Because,
they were the weeds of society.
Yes, except if you go back, there's that video of that British guy that was one of Epstein's kind of pals, right? And he's at that dinner with a bunch of black women, and he tells them, about what good genes they have and what good blood they have because they don't age. And what are all these people obsessed with? What do they talk about with transhumanism? They talk about the end of aging. Right. They
living
talk
forever.
incessantly about it.
Yeah.
About living forever, and about the end of death. They say, that people won't have to die because why your brain can be uploaded, right? And your brain can survive. And this is now what defines you and not this earthly body of yours.
Crazy.
I think these people are certifiably insane.
I agree.
I'm quite happy
somehow
with
they have power.
And they have a lot of power.
It is Lara Logan. Going Rogue with Lara Logan is her podcast. Go check it out. Follow her everywhere. Got a new TikTok site. I'm kicking your ass on TikTok big time, but we're going to help you with that. But go and follow her on Instagram, TikTok.
It's true.
On X, she's got a much bigger following on X and everywhere else than I do. I want to finish with South Africa and what's happening today. I did see the video that I heard you mention earlier in an interview where the white farmer shows back up in Zimbabwe. Mm-hmm. And he was surrounded by, it must have been a few hundred people, all happen to be black. So happy he was back because now they'll be able to feed themselves again. How much of the population of South Africa, the southern part of Africa, not just the country South Africa, that are black, don't want the white farmers to go away? Could you estimate the size of the population that hates that the white farmers are being driven away, because that means their food, their sustenance, their family's future goes away too? Is it a big number? Is it 50-50? Is it a small number? Because I know there are a lot of black people in South Africa that don't want this to happen. That's going on right now.
I would say without the Open Society Foundation and George Soros and that radical DEI type of ideology that has been so heavily funded over the last decade, I would say that the size of the population is minuscule.
Really?
You know, now you have that's my experience.
Well, let me ask you
growing up in Africa and being there for decades.
Yeah, but that requires a follow-up very quickly. Okay, is this them trying to get rid of the population? Get rid of the white farmers, the black people can't eat, they die? Could that be what's going on?
They don't care about the population. Really? These are people who are so self-serving. They think they're the chosen ones. Remember, the globalists have factions everywhere. It's a global cult, which means they have factions in every country on earth. And I've spoken, to someone who infiltrated the global cult at the UN level, and they absolutely said, yes, they have factions everywhere. So these are the kind of people, the Malemas of this world.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody said this to me once. Antifa, they think they're so special, right? They think they're the chosen people. Well, should the Marxists take over, or the globalists, the progressives, whatever you want to call them, the first people that they line up against the wall and shoot. That's right.
They're gone.
And then they work their way systematically through it.
Right.
So they get rid of everybody who stands in their way. So they start with certain, why is it necessary to get rid of the white man first? Why is the white man demonized? Well, who defeated the Nazis in the Second World War?
It was a bunch of white people. Yeah.
The greatest generation.
Yeah.
Now, not only white people, of course, there were people from every race.
Right.
The Tuskegee Airmen and, all kinds of people.
Right.
It was humanity.
It was.
United. Right?
That didn't care about the skin tone or the ancestry.
Correct.
At all.
So what do they have to do? They have to divide, and that goes right back to Sun Tzu and the Art of War in the beginning of time.
Yeah, but does Malema really think he's got a future? Is he so dumb he thinks he's got a seat at the table?
Yeah.
He's a useful idiot. Anybody could see it. His own family should see that.
So's Obama.
Because they're eating steak now, they think that they're in?
Yes. Because they're being fed that. Because these people, remember, they select the people that are not that bright. Look at AOC. I mean,
she's the leader of the party, 26%. She's the top dog in the Democrat Party.
No, she's not.
Well, according to whatever poll we're looking at.
Please.
Well, who is? Who's
polls?
running the joint, do you think, on that side?
Well, I mean, I would look at...
Is it still Obama?
I would look at Obama, John Brennan, James Clapper. There's Burns. Right? There's also Victoria Nuland. There's the Huma Abedins. All of these people
who happen to be dating George Soros' son now, I guess. She just dates and
I think they got married.
Did they get married? It is Lara Logan. Going Rogue with Lara Logan is the podcast. You've got to check it out on all the platforms.
It was pretty awful, by the way.
You went to the wedding?
No, I just saw photos. I saw photos.
How did you get an invite?
It's like, spawn of Satan means spawn of Satan.
And I'm not sure who was who. Go check out Laura's socials as well. Anything she does, make sure that you consume it because it's amazing journalism. And you always get it right. And you've taught me a lot over the years, a lot. I mean, again, I was a TV news anchor on CBS, the 6 and 11 o'clock anchor in the capital region of New York. Got done watching 60 Minutes, and I learned from it. And then I was able to apply that to what I did for a living as well. So I appreciate that.
Well, no one bats 1,000,
Well, you do very well.
People get things wrong, but I do try very hard, yeah.
And we appreciate, the attempt. And the conclusion is normally spot on. Let's finish with South Africa. What happens now? What happens now? The guy was embarrassed in front of Trump and the world. I got it. All the complicit media took up for him. They called it an ambush. Even though the interviews that you did, some of them, they tried to talk you out of believing that we should be seeing what's going on in South Africa. What's the solution? Can this guy Ramaphosa really become the good guy again? Can he change his ways and say, okay, they are feeding the people. Let's stop killing white people? Shouldn't he come out in front of 100,000 South Africans and say, let's stop this nonsense? Will that happen? Would they take him out if he tried?
Well, Malema is powerful, and he has powerful people backing him, and certainly that's a threat to the ANC. Ramaphosa's biggest problem is that he has failed. The ANC has failed to lead, and they have failed to build infrastructure. It's crumbling. They have failed to build the economy. It's crumbling. And so it's not an easy fix for him. South Africa's path forward, though, is one. I mean, there's no question that when you lose skilled people, when you lose your farmers, when you divide, that you fall.
Yeah.
So the honest answer is I don't know what happens now. I'm not there on a daily basis, and I hate that.
Do you ever go back?
Oh yeah, I do go back. I mean, COVID really kind of killed it for me. I had to watch my father die. I had to watch him die and then bury him via Zoom, and so I haven't been back since COVID. But it's just expensive. It's not that I don't want to go back. I mean, I love
Would you be
my
safe
country.
if you went back?
Sure, I have a different threshold.
Well, you do. Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, the picture's just around here with you surrounded by people in the desert. I get it. So I understand
but
that.
There's lots of, it's not like.
But you're also from there, and you're very well known.
I'm from there, and
I noticed that you're a white person. So is there a danger, or you don't think about that?
Oh no, there's definitely a danger. I mean, my sister's been robbed several times. She's been carjacked. My brother's been carjacked. I mean, anyone who's South African knows someone. It's either happened to them or somebody that they love, because the crime is so bad. There was a story 60 Minutes did. It was called Every 22 Seconds, and at that point there was a rape every 22 seconds in South Africa. So there is something that we don't talk about much. South Africa avoided all-out war, which was a great thing, and it was really because great men rose in that moment, right? Men like Cyril Ramaphosa, Nelson Mandela, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and so on. And also, on the white side as well, there were leaders. People recognized that inheriting ashes didn't help anybody.
Right.
But unfortunately, in the years that followed, right, corruption, as always. And what we didn't know is that, the people that were all about civil rights, the Open Society Foundation and all those civil rights NGOs,
the lawyers, right?
They didn't really want the Nelson Mandela legacy of
they weren't
unity
happy
to
with
stand.
peace there.
Of course they were. It doesn't benefit them. They're at war with humanity, and so it may be that white people are in the crosshairs. They're the first ones because that's an obvious target, but it's easier to kill off the rest when you get rid of, when the people are starving.
When you're going to starve them all to death, so you get rid of the next ones next. It is Lara Logan. Go check out Going Rogue with Lara Logan on all the platforms. She's an amazing journalist, award-winning. How many Emmy Awards?
I don't know. It's about 10, 11, 12.
Stop
something
it.
Like that.
Really?
Yeah.
I've only won AP awards, like 28 of them, but I don't have any Emmys.
And about
Emmys.
20 more nominations.
Oh, I'll bet.
And
you probably should have won all of them. Make sure you take in her podcast, Going Rogue. Follow her on all the social media as well. I want to, if you don't mind, would you repeat the story you told to somebody? I think it was an Australian reporter earlier about Nelson Mandela. I thought when he got out, and he stayed in longer than he should have. You said he could have gotten out many times. He's in 27 years. He gets out. He's the president of South Africa. I thought he would do that for life.
Oh, yeah.
Well, why did he only do it for a short time? Please tell that story.
Well, so Nelson Mandela, he was head of the Umkhonto weSizwe, which was the military wing of the ANC.
Okay.
And he was arrested for a terrorist plot, so with plans to do a bombing. The ANC had one of the worst military wings in the history of revolution. They really didn't kill a lot of people. And when Nelson Mandela was convicted for terrorism, he said something amazing at his trial. It's the Rivonia trial, and you can find the speech online. He said that freedom is an ideal for which he would very much like to live, but it is also an ideal for which I am quite prepared to die.
Amazing.
His family begged him not to say that. People in the ANC begged him not to say that. But that is a man who stood for principle the entire time.
Why didn't they kill him? Why did they imprison him?
Well, it's a very good question. I don't know, and I think it's really because
were they afraid of the ramifications if they
possibly
did that?
For sure that was part of it, making him a martyr.
Yeah.
They didn't want to do that, but also in South Africa you didn't have whole-scale slaughter. I mean, you didn't have the KKK. That didn't mean that you didn't have systematic, racial injustice. But it wasn't like that. It's a very integrated society because you've only had 5 million white people, and 30 million black people.
Wow.
I mean, so that makes for a much more integrated day to day than it does, in when you have different population demographics. So it's just a different kind of situation. And Mandela was offered his freedom because his wife, then his ex-wife, Winnie Mandela, they built the Mandela legacy, and he was known throughout the world. And of course, now I realize that they had the help of the Marxists and, the globalists and all the rest of it. But nevertheless, it was a very legitimate
But why
stand.
didn't he take his freedom?
Because it was qualified freedom.
So was his stipulation, end apartheid, then I'll leave? Then you can free me?
Equal rights for all.
Gotcha.
One man,
Simple.
one vote.
Yeah.
Yes, and freedom for all and justice for all. And he never compromised on those ideals. And that's exactly what he got, by the way. And when he came out of prison, there's a wonderful story that his daughters told, which Mandela, remember he used to wear those colorful shirts?
Yes, yeah.
And then, he was the most photographed world leader. He'd go to the UN
Absolutely.
and everyone was making a beeline, right? To be photographed standing
Did you
next
ever
to
interview him?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I met Mandela many times. I didn't actually interview him, but I spoke to him. I went to breakfast with him. I had, when he was waiting for the Queen in a hotel in Cape Town once, I was late coming back for the final
What is this
dinner.
life you have, Lara Logan? Waiting for the Queen in
No,
Cape
but listen, Mandela's standing at the elevators in the Cape Sun.
Right.
And I had been on the Queen's ship with the rest of the media, and she'd had a reception, and I met her and Prince Philip. And then as I was leaving the ship, I scraped the back of my leg, and I was bleeding everywhere. And the Queen said, take her down and take care of her. So they did. The sailors took me down below deck. And so I was late coming back. This was the official dinner that was at the end of the Queen's first official visit with Mandela as president. And so when I got back, I'm rushing and I'm bang, bang, bang on the elevator button. And then I hear this word, hello, Lara.
Stop it.
Yeah.
It's him.
And I turn and it's him.
Wow.
There's the president of my country. I said, Madiba, hello. He's standing there, and he never liked his security to separate him from the people. That's kind of how he was.
Wow.
And he's just waiting for the Queen to arrive. And so I naturally didn't care about the dinner anymore. And I stood talking to him for like 20 minutes before the Queen arrived. It was incredible. But so Mandela was that person,
But why didn't he stay in power? He could have as long as he wanted.
Because he didn't care about power. He cared about the principles. He wasn't there to rule forever. He wanted to hand over power. He negotiated. The ANC could have won with 90% of the vote.
Right.
But Mandela negotiated behind the scenes. He gave parts of that vote to other African tribes, like the Inkatha Freedom Party. He understood that an outright majority would not bring out the best in the ANC.
Okay.
He was willing to compromise. He wanted unity. And Archbishop Desmond Tutu held a big rally after the election, and he got everybody to raise their hands. And Tutu had this voice, and he would say, black. He made everyone in the stadium do it. He's like, do it with me. Black and white together.
I love it.
And that's what everybody had to do.
Right.
And it was a message of unity that's been obliterated by the globalists and the Marxists and the people who seek to divide South Africans.
Had he known, he probably would have stayed on as president. Had he known it would devolve into what we're seeing now? I know that he wouldn't be around now, but he might have been able to leave a longer time in that space. Maybe he has somebody that he hands it over to that is more trusted than who ended up getting it.
There was something very noble in the struggle for freedom and justice in South Africa. And we all had a great faith in the flag bearers of that struggle. Mandela believed in his comrades, and he was just good to his core.
Did he have the kind of aura that I assume he had when you met him? Like people talk about Michael Jordan. When you meet Michael Jordan, there's an aura. There's a glow around the guy because he's the best ever. Did Nelson Mandela have that as well? I think Muhammad Ali had that.
Breathtaking.
I'm sure George Washington probably had it. Was it breathtaking?
It was breathtaking. It was warmth and light. When you were with him, I can't, when you were with him, when you listened to him, this man, when he came out of prison, he was really sought after by people all over the world. And he had this reunion with Winnie Mandela, who had been such a flag bearer for the struggle. But then she became corrupted. And Winnie had this soccer club, and they murdered a young boy called Stompie. And when Mandela and Winnie decided to divorce, the president of South Africa called a press conference. He brought all of the media there. And there were hundreds. And he stood up and he said, I come before you today to share some news with you. He said, I need to tell you something. He said, since the day I walked from prison, I have been the loneliest man.
Wow.
And it was because this woman that he adored, this relationship had broken down and he had kept it internally. And then he said, this is painful for me. You can pull the video, by the way, of the press conference and also of that famous walk
watch it.
when he walks out of prison and he's holding, he are holding hands and people are going crazy. And he just said, here I am. You can ask me anything that you want. I will answer all of your questions. But this is so painful for me. He said, I'm asking something of you. If I do this for you, can you do something for me?
Wow.
Can you never ask me about it again? Because it hurts me to talk about it.
Can you imagine a man that loved, that raw in front of the media? You'd never have that here. You'd never have, honestly.
How can you have that?
Why is it affecting you like that?
Because I love South Africa so much. I love the people, all the people. And by the way, I have to say, there's not just African tribes. There's also the Khoi, the descendants of the Khoi people, or the Bushmen. And I had, who are known as coloureds in South Africa, and it's not a derogatory term. These are the descendants, of the people who lived in the Kalahari Desert, who are lighter skin and they have a different language and culture and traditions and history and everything. And they say we always get left out, and they do always get left out. And then you have a sizable Indian population in South Africa too. I love my country. I love this country as well, my adopted country, and now my home. And I love the people. And there is something, there is something so great in when people unite for principle and stand together, and it's just breathtaking. And Mandela was a remarkable man, and I think he would be rolling in his grave today, and he would be so sad. He'd be so mad at Cyril.
We can fix it, though. I think it can be fixed.
Oh, you can fix anything.
Putting it on the world stage like yesterday, I think could be. Thank you for just being honest about how you're feeling about all this. Honestly, I didn't think that you wouldn't be honest with me, but people know you as the person sitting in the chair on 60 Minutes introducing some incredible story that you went out and reported. Yeah. Thank you for letting us in a little bit. I really appreciate that.
It pains me that people
obviously it does.
At home suffer. It pains me, the violence and the poverty. There are people in South Africa are good people. They don't deserve this.
I've never thought of South Africans as bad people, but there's some force out there that you keep talking about, the Marxists, the globalists, and so on, who want us to see the division. This is what Obama did. Obama was the chief Marxist in charge for 8 years. He divided and tried to conquer. He wanted revenge out of the White House. He wanted us to be divided so you can control. Hispanics hate the blacks hate the whites hate the Indians, and that's what he did. And he was very successful because he was very smooth at it. Thankfully, Biden, it wasn't very smooth. Thankfully, those who are in charge now aren't. But I love the love that you have for South Africa. I'm probably a little older than you, but growing up, I never had a bad thought about South Africa. I wanted to know what apartheid was, and I didn't understand why it existed, and I was glad to see it go away, and I was a fan of Mandela.
Fear.
But
it existed out of fear.
Right, but we didn't grow up hating South Africa.
No, and
now the Marxists, the liberals in the media need you and me to hate the white people in South Africa.
Yes. And by the way, I'm very glad that you mentioned Obama, and this is what makes you a great journalist,
Thank
Joe.
You.
Because Obama, actually, if he put an ambassador in there, Patrick Gaspard, and when Patrick Gaspard was the U.S. ambassador in South Africa, the issue of land expropriation really became a hot button issue. And he came out publicly advocating for land expropriation. You can look up his public statements on that. And by the way, when he was recalled from South Africa at the end of Obama's term, where do you think he went? What was his next job?
I don't know.
President of the Open Society Foundation.
Of course.
And who replaced
just a revolving door.
Who replaced him?
I don't know.
Lord Malik Brown. You know who Lord Malik Brown was?
It sounds very familiar.
He was the head of Smartmatic.
Of course he was.
And he was on the...
Of course he was.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you can't mention Smartmatic because you'll get canceled by everybody. Can't mention any voting system at all.
And what happened at the end of the 2020 election? Lord Malik Brown came to the United States and replaced Patrick Gaspard as the president of the Open Society Foundation.
It's a strange coincidence, isn't it?
Isn't it?
It's so odd. Out of 8 billion people, only 2 people could do those jobs. It's very weird. Mm-hmm. It's Lara Logan. Go and check out Going Rogue. This is nothing compared to what she does on her show. The amazing uncovering things, interviews like you won't see anywhere else. I hope one day to be even close to as good as this young lady here. Let me ask, why do you do this? Growing up, you're a beautiful woman. You probably had every opportunity going. You decided to go and sleep in huts and go to the middle of the Middle East and try to find peace and uncover the news. Why do you do this?
I'll tell you why.
I'm guessing you had many opportunities.
I had many opportunities. I had an amazing education, and I did very well in school. And so, I tutored law, first Roman law in college, because I was, I was thinking about being an attorney. I'll tell you why I do it, because when I was a little girl, 6, 7, maybe, my father would take us to like a 7-Eleven, and we would be given 20 cents. And my sister and I, we could choose whatever candy we wanted. Okay. And we would spend hours choosing, and drove my father nuts. Cents. Yes, with 20 cents. And we were standing in line in this grocery store. Now, it was run by an Indian family, and I'll never forget the long line. And there was an elderly African man, and he had a loaf of bread, and he had coins. He was holding the coins in his hands. And one by one, all the people were being served. And when my father got to the front, this Indian storekeeper looked at him, and he said, he was here before me. My dad gestured to the man. And the guy said, and like this, I don't care about him. And my father said, I don't think you understand. He was here before me. You're not serving me until you serve him.
Amazing.
And that's how I grew up. That's the family that I grew up in. My mother and father were both like that. And all the, in my family and many of the people that I knew. And we believed in kindness, and we believed in respect. And from my...
And justice.
And justice. Yeah. And my earliest memories are that when I witnessed this kind of thing, it just tore me apart. I couldn't bear it.
Was that regular practice in South Africa back then?
No. Well, I'm not going to say it never happened, but it wasn't regular practice. I mean, it stuck out to me, right? Yeah. You didn't see that kind of thing every day. So I just knew always that I couldn't live with that pain. I had to do something about it. It was obvious to me that I was not born to be an activist. I'm not a group think person. You know what I mean? I'm not going to go with the group just to go with the group.
You couldn't go rogue if you were a groupthink.
You can't. No, that's right.
You really can't.
That's right. I've been preparing for this. I've been rogue all my life, Joe. It's just official now.
Right. Well, you've got a sign now.
It's in lights.
There it is.
Yeah. And so, but I knew in South Africa growing up that there was something very wrong that was happening.
Yeah.
And when the South African government put in emergency restrictions, and they could talk about the ANC, and they could show a picture of Nelson Mandela, but you went to jail if you did it.
Wow.
And it was a controlling of the narrative. And I just knew it was wrong. Every part of me knew it was wrong, and I was never going to live with that. But what it seemed to me, as well, as I was born with a love of writing, and my English teacher at 8 told my mother, if this child doesn't write, it'll be a crime. And I was raised around books, and so I realized I have nothing to offer as a writer, because I haven't seen anything. I don't know anything.
You had to go and get the experiences.
Yes. So when I was when I was working as a journalist in high school, I got a job. I offered to work for nothing, and I would crawl.
Was it at an actual outlet?
Oh yeah, it was at a newspaper, a big weekly Sunday newspaper, nice. The Sunday Tribune. You know what I would do in those days? The photographers would have to print their photos. Mm-hmm. Remember that?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so what they would do is they would look at the negatives and choose a few different versions, mm-hmm. right? And then but then they would go through them, and they would pick the best ones to be printed in the paper. Well, they just discarded all the others under the table. So when they left, I would crawl under the table.
Oh, wow.
And I'd go and collect.
Come on.
Yes. And I made photo albums, and I would torture my mother and all her friends and my brothers and sisters.
You would write stories around the pictures that you
No, I would make them look at,
wow.
there's a person in the violence in the township with an axe in their head, and they're bleeding all over the mattress, and here's a baby that's chopped in half. And I would be like, look at what's happening in this country.
Yeah.
So I can only tell you, I was born to do this.
Yeah.
From the moment I took air.
Well, I think we were all born to do something, but you and I are lucky enough that we figured out what it is.
Yes.
And we're all lucky enough that you figured out what it is. You say you love to write, but obviously the writing became the presence, became the storytelling, because some of my favorite stories that you've ever done. I, by the way, love the Benghazi story.
Thank you. It was a great story.
It was an unbelievable story. So good that it got you in trouble.
Yeah.
But I also love when you interviewed Bruno Mars.
Yeah.
I mean, holy mackerel, the joy that you showed in that interview. Have you always had the ability to almost like a chameleon, become part of whatever story it is that's going on? Because we've got your flak jacket over here that you had to wear in one story. We've got the other story where you're walking around in the music studio with Bruno Mars, just enjoying the joy of music and the joy that he got from entertaining people. Have you always been that person that can, no matter what it was, you can fit into that and tell people about it?
You know, I love people, and they're all the same to me. So when I was, a young journalist, I would sit with the Minister of Defense of Angola. I got the only interview with Bakili Muluzi.
Wow.
When in Malawi at the time when he wasn't talking to anyone else, and I was like, 21? I think that if you respect can't be faked. It really can't. And when your heart is full of love and joy, like mine is, because, in Africa really is a land of love and joy. I mean, there's a dark side to it, but, even in poverty, people exhibit such joy. And so
right.
I was raised in the sun and the light of Africa. And,
I love it.
And I love that. And so, but I do think that it's truly about respect. I listen to people. I'm a good talker, but I'm a great listener.
Incredible listener.
And I care. And
That's why the questions are so good. If you're not listening, you can't ask questions.
No, and I hate those interviews when people are looking at a piece of paper. What's
You'll
the
notice
next?
we have no notes.
We have no paper. We
right.
don't need notes.
We don't need that.
Yeah, you don't need it. I would do 4-hour interviews at 60 Minutes with no notes.
Right.
Or I'd keep them because out of respect for the producers,
Right.
you want to make sure you don't miss anything.
Yeah,
And so-
bullet points maybe,
yeah.
but that's it.
And then I would say, did I miss? And I wouldn't look at them, And I would say, did I
can
miss
see that.
anything? But I just think that with people, Bruno Mars had joy,
So much joy oozes from that guy.
and he's a good.
But
person.
you added to it. Without
Yeah.
you there, that story doesn't make any sense.
because Bruno and I respected each other.
I love it. Yeah, people ask me all this time. By the way, we're sitting on her set. This is Going Rogue with Lara Logan's set. This is the Joe Pags, Unshaken and Unafraid with Joe Pags. Really, really glad to be here.
I like that. Unshaken
That's
and
what it is. Well, they
Unafraid.
swatted me and they didn't stop me. They kicked me
know.
off of some big radio stations. That didn't stop me. They stopped me on Twitter for a minute because they said hydroxychloroquine works. That didn't stop me. So we're Unshaken and Unafraid. But we're here on her set. Go check out this show. It is Going Rogue with Lara Logan. I've got to ask you a question. People ask me all the time, and I don't have an answer. Maybe you do. What is your favorite interview ever? And I don't have an answer because I loved interviewing Bill Medley from the Righteous Brothers. I loved being in the White House interviewing Donald Trump. I loved interviewing Tommy James and the Shondells with my first interview in 1990. So I don't really have an answer. Do you have one?
I don't. I mean, I'm just like you. Sometimes I love doing the story we did on Super 6-1, which was the first helicopter that went down in Somalia.
Right.
Black Hawk down.
Yes.
Right. And when we did, I'm so proud of that story because that's the only time that Delta has officially allowed anyone to speak for that unit, and we were allowed to talk to Norm Houghton, who was on the ground that day. And it's such a powerful story. And they gave us the original footage of that Black Hawk crashing that no one had ever seen publicly.
Right.
So that's a big story for me. I went to Liberia at the height of the Ebola epidemic, the worst in history.
What is wrong with you? What are you thinking?
To the front line, by the way, of a frontline treatment center. And
Let me go to Liberia. Ebola's really taken off there. Let's send Lara.
oh, that broke my heart, that story. That was so hard. I'll never forget standing there, right? They had 2 wards, and wards is a glamorous term for it. And you're out in the middle of nowhere, and it's got that construction tape, and people are separated. And we were waiting to go into the unconfirmed side. And then I just heard this woman screaming. And it's because they had taken her baby, because her baby had tested positive. And now they had just come to tell her that her husband was across the plastic construction fence. He had died in the confirmed ward.
God.
And that was one of the, it's so close to your heart. And then they attacked that story and said, our story was about the surgeons that came from places like Stanford and went and volunteered in these frontline treatment centers. And it was a homage in many ways to the Liberians, and also we find the niche in the story at 60 Minutes, right? We don't repeat what's on the news. And of course they went after that and said it was racist because I wasn't
so dumb.
Didn't have any black people in it. Of course, I interviewed dozens of black people for that story, but we didn't select people based on race, and it was a great piece.
Did you always know that you were bucking the narrative? I get the feeling that you don't go in thinking, I'm going to fix the narrative. I think you go in and just report the story.
I just go.
But oftentimes it bucks the narrative. They want you to do something different. And then you end up with work, and then they attack you because it wasn't in that box they wanted you to be in.
Yeah, like the Baltimore Bridge collapse.
Yes.
You know
exactly
what I mean?
Right.
I had no idea what the FBI was saying. I had no idea what they were saying on social media. I just happened, it fell into my lap. I had calls scheduled and people that I was due to talk to. And then, I made some other calls and, I found out that it was being reported within the intelligence agencies as a cyber spoofing attack. I mean, that's how, it was being reported within the Biden administration's own intelligence agencies, and so for people to deny that and say that never happened and then say, and come out so quickly and deny that it was an attack at all. And then all the other stories they made up. And by the way, I was familiar with spoofing from years on the battlefield. It's an old technique.
Well, do we know on that story? Because I just said it's ridiculous. I guess I sounded stupid saying that because it was a cyber attack.
Yeah.
They were able to hack into the ship.
Yeah.
Is that public now? Everybody knows that? I know that you reported it. I think you actually sent it to me at like 2:00 in the morning that night.
Yes.
When you're like, Joe, you're not gonna believe this. And have they ever officially said that was what it was?
No. But that's what it was being reported as internally. And I spoke to multiple people about it. Did you notice, Joe, how you never heard from the ship's pilot, the harbor pilot? Never saw any interviews with him? You notice how those people that fell into the river...
You saw who they put in front of it, though, right?
Yeah.
The young black Baltimore mayor, who was one of these guys that, does the histrionics.
How would he know?
Well, he wouldn't.
He'd have no idea.
He would have no idea.
Just like all those people at the polling
But he somehow
stations.
made it about race immediately that we were questioning what was going on.
Please, give me a break. Just like they put people at the polling stations to vouch for the machines who have no idea. They don't read code.
Of course
they don't know what's happening in the machines.
Right.
And if you put a gun to their head, they couldn't tell you an honest answer.
Will we ever get into a post-racial America where they stop using that as a tool to divide us? Will we get there?
Of course we will. Of course.
Will we see it?
I don't know. I'm not a prophet.
You're young enough. I'm not.
I'm not a prophet. Wait, I'm 54. How old are you?
58.
Okay, so you only got four years on me,
right.
Joe.
That's right. It bothers me to no end. I'll tell you, you didn't ask, but I'll tell you this, and Sam knows this, my executive producer and daughter, who screens my calls. A guy called in yesterday. Thank you. A guy called in from Connecticut yesterday in my live show, and he wanted to tell me what a racist I was.
Oh, okay.
I didn't take the call because we were out of time or something. We were right up against it. But I've taken calls like that. And that is the cheapest, nastiest, quick insult that people go to. And of course, my answer is very simple. What did I ever do or say that was racist? They can't tell you. I just get the feeling from what you say. But will we get to a point to where the simple-minded people don't get the spotlight and the sunshine when they keep on claiming racism? Just because you're white, just because I'm beautifully olive, I'm Southern Italian, just because I'm white as well, the first assumption from these simple-minded people is they must be racist. Forget the work they're doing. Forget the story they told.
I don't think of them as simple-minded, Joe. It's not that. It's indoctrinated.
But they're not deep.
They're ideologically blinded.
Okay.
That's what I mean. So some of them are smart, some of them are not smart. That's not a criteria. You can be very smart and believe that's a nonsense.
How could anybody ever call you racist? I watched almost every story you've ever done. How is that ever? How did they think that was going to stick?
Oh, anti-Semitic, racist,
You're anti-Semitic too.
Right, domestic terrorist. I've been called all of it. Yeah, all of it. And unhinged, they love that one because how can you defend yourself against
Going
that?
rogue? Oh, no, you actually are going rogue. So you are that, okay.
But look, this is the thing. Remember how effective that was in the first Trump administration? It's not so effective now, is it?
It's not.
And so
But is that because of him or did we grow as a nation?
It's probably both.
Okay.
It's probably both, but it's because also the tactics are being exposed.
Yeah.
And people are getting tired of it. And people are seeing the truth. So the answer to your question lies there, I think, right? I mean, I'm not going to guess into the future, but if I look at what has been happening, the trajectory is that people are rejecting that.
Good.
So, can you say it? Can you speak for everybody? And can you look into your crystal ball? I just believe in the goodness of humanity. I believe in the truth.
Do you go into every story believing in the goodness?
Yeah.
You go into every story thinking that there is a light here and I should expose it?
No.
Because some stories are horrible.
I don't ever think like that.
Okay.
I just go into every story trying to understand as much as I can. And to understand, I have to learn. And to learn, I have to listen and I have to ask. And you can never know enough. I mean, we try to find the people who are the best at what they do, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, Bruno Mars is the example you used. How could I ever know as much about performing and music and composition and all of these things as Bruno Mars does? When I sit down with a bioweapon specialist, I'll never know as much as they do. I mean, I was just looking at Lee Zeldin last night and listening and watching all these videos because I was thinking about, approaching him for an interview. And I realized, wow, he's living this EPA thing day by day by day. Like, I will never know as much about the EPA as he does. So how do I handle that? How do I learn as much as I can. I want to be smart and I want to be honest and I want to be accurate. But at the same time as well, I want to, if needed, I need to be able to challenge things or offer different perspective, And so that is a vast undertaking. When you do your job properly, when you do it the way it's supposed to be done, it is incredibly time consuming and difficult. And so, and everything that you do, as you pull back on all of those, what happens to the depth of your conversation? It decreases.
Yes.
So it becomes more and more and more superficial.
Right.
So can I sit down and do a superficial interview? Sure. But what am I going to get? I'm going to get a superficial result.
This wasn't a superficial interview, that's for sure. And if anybody asks me today who my favorite person ever to interview is, I'm going to say Lara Logan. I think the next interview we do is probably our favorite, right? The next one we do, we always go in with high hopes that it's going to be great, or else why do the work?
I loved interviewing Angela Stanton King.
That was amazing.
And I loved interviewing...
I love that you sent it to me, and I watched it, and I was riveted.
Thank you.
Everybody should see that interview.
See, that's what's amazing about you. How do you find the time to watch that?
I sleep 3 hours a night.
I know, and you do everything yourself. You're the consummate professional.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're always listening. Nice. And you are old school, and you're kind of one of my refuges, because I think people are seeing the reality of where activism and journalism collide. Right. And sometimes it's for good, but it's not always for good. And that's why it's important to try to, to hew to the principles of journalism. And you're one of those.
We're just really interested in stuff. We want to learn about that. You know what I mean? I want to sit down. I want to learn more about you. I want to learn about the people that I interview. I think that those who go in with a slant could never do what you do.
You got to be naturally nosy.
Well, exactly. But I think you're naturally nosy, but you're a clean slate when you start the interview. You have to be, don't you? If you go with preconceived notions, you're in trouble.
So I always rejected preconceived notions. And, that was difficult for me at times in television because people...
Because you did have information going in.
Well, and they want to figure out the story in advance, and then they want to be very surgical, right? And targeted. Right. They don't want to wade through a 3-hour interview to get, the key sound bites. They don't want to wade through all the details. I remember a CNN correspondent, who shall remain nameless, said to me once, when I was covering the war in Kosovo for CNN, and I was freelance and I was young, and he was a staff correspondent, and so he was where the action was every day, which was at the border, right, where people would come escaping the war,
right.
And then of course it got boring. And I was in the refugee camp, and I didn't mind because I was building relationships with the women because I wanted to talk about rape as a weapon of war.
Yes.
And you don't just walk into those conversations, you have to walk softly. And so that day they said, no, he's going to the camp today and you go to the border, because they thought there was nothing happening at the border. Well, of course, that's the day a car comes over with a family and hits a landmine and is murdered, and it's the big story of the day. So they tell me, get to the refugee camp, give him all your information. He's doing the story because he's the big guy. Okay, I have no problem with that. So I go there, and as I'm taking him through the names and ages of the children in the car who were killed, at least 3 of them, he stops me in front of everybody, and he says, wait. He says, tell me something. He said, you used to work for an agency, didn't you? And I was like, yeah, because I work for Reuters news agency, right? And he said, I can tell. He said, I really don't need all of that. I just need these facts. I need like 3 facts. And I was like, wow, he's not even interested. He's trying to humiliate me in front of everyone for being meticulous and detailed and accurate.
For doing it right.
I was like, okay, this doesn't fit the CNN model, obviously. The model is bam, 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 throw it out there. And, by the way, how they get this consistency that you talk about in the media, part of how they get it is they're too afraid to be different. they all follow each other. They look to see what the New York Times is going to say, and then they follow it. And I saw it when I was at the State Department as the chief foreign affairs correspondent for CBS News. You'd do a press conference, and then they'd have a little huddle, sort of the veteran State Department, people. And they would always want to hear what each other was saying. And then the first stuff that, the wires would go out first, right? Yeah. So the wire reporters were always, print reporters were always, would be part of the lead. Mm-hmm. And then everyone would follow because nobody wanted to you didn't want to miss the story of the day. And your boss is in New York. What are they looking at? You know how many times when I was living in Baghdad for 5 years, reporting for CBS News, how many times I would come to them with an original story and they would say, but we haven't seen this anywhere. Like, no one else is reporting this. And I'd be like,
how is that the qualification?
Because it's original reporting.
Right, it's a real story.
No, they don't want original reporting. They want to know, okay, New York Times has covered this, we're safe. Then we're okay. Can you get this story that was in the New York Times? No, because you know what I have? I just went out with a unit and I've got an ambush on camera and I can tell you all about this, and this. Wow. And I actually think it's worth you believing in me because I work for you.
Right. And I would have gotten
and
so
the
much
New York
more
Times
as a viewer.
Weren't there.
The New York Times is only being focused on by the big media. So is the Washington Post. None of the rest of us care. I love that you're different. I love that you push the envelope. I have stories that are similar to that we could talk about when we're done with this. Thank you for giving me so much time. I absolutely love what you've done. You've taught me so much over the years. The fact that we're friends now blows my mind. Oh. Thank you for being loud. Thank you for being strong. Thank you for being right. Thank you for being rogue. I appreciate everything that you do for all of us. I know that you take great joy in what you do and great pride in what you do, but we're the ones that really, really get the benefit. And I can't thank you enough.
You are so gracious, Joe.
Thank you.
You really are. And I appreciate your friendship so much.
Same. Absolutely the same.
It's an honor.
Do me a favor. Check out Going Rogue with Lara Logan. It is everywhere you get podcasts now. Go there and do that. Download it. Spread it around. Make sure everybody in your family sees it. Everybody in the community sees it. Because what she's doing is real journalism with the flair that you get from Lara Logan. That's going to do it for this time on Unshaken and Unafraid with Joe Pags. A new one drops very soon.